The waitress helped an elderly woman who had just been humiliated, never realizing she was a millionaire. What happened next shocked everyone. It was a luxury restaurant, full of wealthy, polished people. Then suddenly, the doors opened, and an older woman walked in. White hair, simple clothes, a wilted flower in her hand. The entire dining room froze. The manager, Mr. Almeida, stormed over, shouting, "What do you think you're doing in here? This place isn't for people like you." He was about to humiliate the old woman even more, but he did not notice that Julia, one of the waitresses, was watching everything with her heart breaking. "I knew I could lose my job," Julia would later say, "but I just couldn't stay quiet." She walked up to him trembling. "Mr. Almeida, please, let me pay for her meal." The manager turned red with fury, but before he could fire her on the spot, the elderly woman did something that brought the entire restaurant to a standstill. The woman, who looked frail and vulnerable, slowly lifted her head. There was something powerful in her eyes now, something different. She ignored the manager and handed Julia the wilted flower. "Thank you, my child," she said softly. "You have a heart of gold." Then, as she turned to leave, she spoke loudly enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "The seed of kindness you planted today will grow into a tree that bears golden fruit. Wait, and you will see." Julia stood there holding that wilted flower, completely confused, yet somehow certain her life was about to change forever. The moment the door closed, Almeida came at her. He dragged her into the kitchen. "Have you lost your mind? Who do you think you are, going against me like that? Want to end up out on the street?" He squeezed her arm so hard it hurt. With tears in her eyes, but her voice steady, Julia answered, "I only did what my heart told me to do. That woman reminded me of my mother." He shoved her away. "Pull a stunt like that again, and you'll be out of here with nothing." Julia went back into the dining room, feeling the contempt of the customers. They preferred blaming the waitress who helped than the manager who had humiliated an old woman. During her break in the corner of the staff room, she took the wilted flower out of her pocket. She thought about the promise of golden fruit. Life had been hard, but that flower lit a small flame of hope inside her. Just then, Marta, the oldest waitress in the restaurant, walked in and nearly startled her. "Girl, have you lost your mind? The first rule of surviving this hell is pretending you're blind and deaf. Almeida never forgets." Marta told her that the year before, another employee named Beto had defended a dishwasher who had been humiliated. Almeida had not only fired him, he had also called other restaurants in town and ruined the man's reputation. Julia felt her blood run cold. Real fear hit her then, but along with the fear came anger. She looked at Marta and made a decision right there. She would rather be fired than turn into someone cold and heartless like her boss. She would not take back what she had done, no matter the cost. The old woman's promise had not been a lie. The next day, Almeida's private war against her began. He put her on the worst shifts, with barely enough time to sleep, and assigned her only to the back tables where tips were terrible. He did everything he could to make her quit, but Julia held on until Saturday night when he laid the perfect trap. The restaurant was packed. In front of a wealthy customer, Almeida pointed at her and said, "That waitress over there has a habit of trying to turn this restaurant into a shelter for beggars." Julia felt her face burn with shame, but the worst was still to come. At the end of the night, he called her into his office and closed the door with a victorious look on his face. "Julia, and now it seems you're a thief too. The customer at table 6 says a $100 bill disappeared from his wallet after you cleared the table." It was a shameless lie. "Confess, thief, or I'll call the police right now." "I didn't steal anything. I'm poor, but I'm honest," Julia said, crying in despair. She was trapped. It felt like there was no way out. But that was the exact moment the old woman's promise was about to come true. Just as Almeida was about to call the police, his private phone rang. It was a number he clearly recognized. He answered with irritation, but on the other end of the line was a woman's voice, calm, firm, and powerful. "Good evening, Mr. Almeida. My name is Amelia. I believe we need to have a very serious conversation about one of your employees, Miss Julia." The manager went pale. The man who seconds earlier had been a raging beast was now trembling like a frightened dog. Julia stood frozen, watching Almeida's face fall apart. "Yes, ma'am. Of course, ma'am. Understood, ma'am. As you wish, ma'am." Julia could not hear Amelia's voice, but she could see its effect. He was shaking. When he hung up, he stared into nothing, as if he had seen a ghost. "Julia, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. The customer found the money in his coat. None of this was your fault. I apologize. Please go home and get some rest." The apology was weak and obviously false. But the nightmare was over. Julia walked out of the office in a daze. The image of the old woman with the flower flooded back into her mind. The wilted flower, the promise of golden fruit. The voice on the phone was Amelia, and suddenly it all clicked. The humble old woman she had defended was not helpless at all. She was someone incredibly powerful, so powerful that one single phone call had made the terrifying Mr. Almeida shake with fear. Julia had not helped a poor old woman. She had helped a queen in disguise. The next morning, Julia's phone rang. It was Amelia. "Good morning, Miss Julia. I would like to invite you to coffee. I think we have a great deal to discuss, especially about your future." Julia put on her best dress and went to the fanciest hotel in the city. The doorman looked at her with contempt at first, but the moment she said, "Mrs. Amelia is expecting me," his face changed into startled respect. There she was, Mrs. Amelia, dressed like royalty, wearing pearls, seated in the hotel cafe. She stood and embraced Julia with a tenderness that felt almost motherly. Then she explained, "I have a great deal of money, but it brought me loneliness. Once a year, I dress simply and go out to see whether kindness still exists in the world. That day you were the only light in my darkness." Then came the offer. "I want you to come work with me. A position of trust, a salary 10 times higher than what you earn now. You would help me with a social project." Julia was already in shock, but Amelia was not finished. She took Julia's hand, her eyes glistening. "I'm not only looking for an employee, I'm a lonely woman, and in you I saw the daughter I never had. I want to give you a job, yes, but more than that, I want to pay for your education. I want to teach you everything I know. I want to take care of you." Julia, who was an orphan and had fought alone all her life, could not hold back any longer. She cried with relief, with joy, with gratitude. 2 weeks later, she returned to the restaurant. But this time, she was not coming back to serve tables. Mrs. Amelia had rented out the entire restaurant for a private dinner, and Julia was the guest of honor. Mr. Almeida was standing at the entrance with a fake smile, dripping with flattery. At first, he did not recognize Julia, but his smile melted the moment Amelia, the beggar, stepped out of a luxury car beside her, dressed like one of the wealthiest women in the world. Almeida froze in the doorway, pale as paper. Julia looked him straight in the eye and said, "Good evening, Mr. Almeida. We're here for our dinner." Mrs. Amelia looked at him and said in a cold voice, "It's good to know you treat some guests with such respect." That word, "some," hit like a slap. His humiliation was proof that justice had finally arrived. Almeida tried to explain himself. Amelia stopped